Hey everyone, welcome back to the news. So here's the deal, right? We've had two early access games come out in a pretty damn high profile way. They're actually coming out around the same time as our game, and we were up there with the new and trending, so it was kind of fun watching everybody, knock about the place together. Now those two games have had wildly different customer reactions. One of them obviously is Sons of the Forest, which has been an absolute runaway success, and the other one is Kerbal Space Program 2, a game that, while I'm sure it's done well enough on the financial side, oh boy, it is not doing particularly well on the user feedback side. The funny thing is, one of these games very much is traditional, true early access. The other one is a lot more developed, and I think this does highlight a lot of shifting and changing player expectations, especially when we talk about the idea of an early access sequel. And the funny thing too is we're actually coming up to the 10th anniversary of Steam Early Access, something that of course has produced for us many hilarious, decently high profile failures, but also quite a lot of wins. You just have to look at Arma 3, Prison Architect, Project Zomboid, which has been doing massively in the charts lately, to see that. Now when you look at Sons of the Forest, basically that is... it's in early access, there's a lot of game there, and their expectation is 6 to 8 months of early access. They want to refine things with community feedback, work out the kinks, right? Seems reasonable. And man, has it done well. They actually shifted 2 million copies in 24 hours. That is numbers that loads of AAAs would actually be envious of, just to emphasize the achievement there. But you then look at Kerbal Space Program 2, and while we do not exactly have sales figures for it, what you can see is that, oh boy, that Steam review is not particularly good. And I think if anything is going to give a user second thoughts, it's going to be they're excited for a game, they see the marketing, they go to Steam to buy it, and oh dear, why is the review number red or orange? This isn't good. And that's where we see that Kerbal 2 is actually true early access. It is just the foundations of Kerbal 2. It has less features than Kerbal 1, but of course is built in that newer framework, I suppose updated physics, updated graphics, all of those things, whereas Sons of the Forest is far more of a complete game. And a really funny thing, so whenever Steam does refunds, right, basically if you have access to the Steam backend by being a publisher or developer, you can basically see the refund note. And for the Pale Beyond, two of the refunds that we had were really funny, because they were people who were trying to buy Sons of the Forest and accidentally bought Pale. But Steam is just that massive, and so many millions of people were trying to buy Sons of the Forest that apparently that's just the kind of thing that can happen. Of course, if you'd like to support this show and support our team, you can go and check out The Pale Beyond over on Steam. It's been super well received by the critics and the players, and as for the bugs, we've pretty much nuked all the major ones by now, and we've got loads of just really nice things lined up for the future of the game. So, if you want to support us, you can purchase The Pale Beyond over in Steam, and of course, please consider leaving a honest review after you've played as well, because that helps too. Okay, so the elephant in the room here is that we're dealing with sequels, and that changes what a player's expectation actually is, because for them, they need a reason to move from Kerbal 1 to Kerbal 2, as an example. So a sequel has got to be iterative, right? Its start point should feel like the end point of the game that came before it. Now, of course, that's from the consumer's perspective. If you're a developer, you probably hear that and think, are you mad? So the sequel, by default, just has to have as much content and as much polish as the previous version. That seems insane. But to a degree, I think that is what is happening, right? People play The Forest, they then go to The Forest 2, right? Sons of the Forest. And yes, while there is more development work to be done, they do get a fairly whole-feeling experience. Unlike with what Kerbal is, which is basically a fundamental rebuilding of core systems that then will later reach feature parity with 1, which is really where a lot of people would expect it to be, or at least to have a foot in the door of loads of the feature set of Kerbal 1. I think this is especially the case for people who perhaps just wanted more of a campaign mode, more of a sort of guided mode to take them through things. We'll get into Kerbal a little bit soon. And basically the point is that Sons of the Forest has absolutely nailed that. It actually got, those 2 million sales, they actually broke Steam's checkout for a while, which is pretty insane. And what works for them is that the core of the game really hasn't actually changed that much. You pretty much have all of the core features, plus a new AI companion that basically will help to streamline some of the more tedious collection aspects of the game. You have a new crafting and building system that offers, basically it's tangibly different, right? I think for some people better. There's a new island with new threats. There's a seasonal survival model that also is giving people plenty to chew on, right? Because I guess it just makes the whole world more interesting. You got to change up your game plan. And this is all while people are waiting for the story to be expanded upon, more more items to be added in, that sort of thing. But the core is lots of good developments. The problem with Kerbal, though, is that it is not Kerbal 1 with more stuff. It is basically saying, okay, that's Kerbal 1, we're going to hit the reset button and build it again. And we're going to build it again with newer tech, right? With updated, assumptions based on our experience with 1. So it has an improved user experience, a revamped solar system, new parts, new tutorial, new onboarding, new soundscapes, new soundtrack, but you're definitely missing a lot if you take a look here at what's coming then. So early access starts with the UX, revamped, the revamped solar system with new parts, and the new tutorial onboarding. Then we get science gathering and tech tree progression. Then we get colony parts and orbital vehicle construction. Then it's the new star system plus interstellar scale parts. Then there's another star system to reveal with resource gathering, and then more, multiplayer, more launch locations, that kind of thing. That's just a big roadmap, though. And we're really going to get to the stickler, because it's actually not made by the original developers, and this is something a lot of players may not know. So here's the deal. The original creator walked away in May of 2016. Then he was followed by 8 more developers in October 16. Take-Two then purchased the rights to Kerbal Space Program, and then they took it to the remaining devs squad. Then they announced Kerbal 2 with a new developer, Star Theory Games, which is formerly Uber Entertainment, who made Monday Night Combat. Then that was, in 2020, pulled from Star Theory Games and brought in-house at Take-Two, who basically made a new studio called Intercept to make Kerbal Space Program 2. As a part of this, they did offer jobs to the Star Theory people. Now, they did this after attempting to buy the studio, but the owners of the studio did not find the terms to be acceptable. So 30 people took the offer to keep their jobs, and the remaining staff at Star Theory were basically just left scrambling because now they've lost a whole bunch of developers. They don't have the big project anymore. Then the pandemic hit, and they were forced to close. Crazy. So this was delayed at the end of 2020 into fiscal 2020 to 2021, then autumn 21, then some point 22, then finally early 2023. And I think this is just the core context. When people think about Kerbal, it's been out for a long time. I mean, come on, how long have Kerbal people been watching? The people who are watching Kerbal videos. And I think for it to have taken so long, for so little content progress, to a lot of casual fans feels insane, because they don't know this. They don't know this. All that they know is that it's been a long time since Kerbal 1, and somehow 2 doesn't really have that much in it. So ultimately, they've absolutely bungled that. And it obviously is not going to help, player trust, because they'll kind of feel like the publisher just rushed this out before it was ready, right? Sort of abusing the early access model. And also, if this is what you have to do because you're an indie studio, you need to keep the lights on. You're like, okay, hello, players, we need to do this. This is the very basic version of the game, right? Don't buy it if you want everything. But if you want to support the development, buy it. People will accept that. Will people accept this from Take-Two Interactive? The people who publish Red Dead and Grand Theft Auto? I don't think people see Take-Two as the sorts that should be really dealing in early access. It just feels quite bizarre. And ultimately then that leads us to the cold hard numbers, right? We have an 82%, 66,000 reviews, very positive, for Sons of the Forest, and then for Kerbal, we're at 50 with 10,000 reviews, right? 50% positive. In Kerbal, what do you got? Well, because we, of course, dove through the reviews. Basically, bugs, lack of new features, unoptimized performance, especially in high-end rigs, missing features from Kerbal 1, and generally a dissatisfaction of this being an early access title at all, which I would totally agree with, because frankly, that is not what you expect from the same publisher that is making this with an internal studio that's also the publisher that's got Take-Two money, right? That is really bizarre. It kind of feels I know that they didn't send this out to die. I just think that the decision making from Take-Two is kind of baffling. And there was a little bit in their previous earnings call of Strauss-Zelnick seeming to basically say, look, our teams did great work, but we, as the publisher, maybe let them down, maybe didn't do as good a job of getting their games out there, right? I mean, Strauss, you might have to update it with this one as well, because from what I've seen of looking at Kerbal 2, it really does have the potential to go somewhere. There's a lot of really cool tech. It seems like it's probably being developed in a way that will help them add more content and features and really make it a brilliant game. But ultimately, do you want to be stuck with a 50%? Because if you want to, like, if you have 10,000 and you're at 50%, you've got to add 5,000 positive reviews just to get to, like, you know what I mean, right? It's like getting that percentage up is going to take so many more players that it's going to be really, really hard. Now, the good news for them is that Steam does for, for games like when they keep on getting reviews, it will say maybe recent reviews, very positive. It was like that for a while with No Man's Sky before it ticked over to being a way, way, way more very, positive experience. But this just seems kind of mad. And then you compare it to Sons of the Forest, where basically, other than a few features that people would like to be re-implemented, like a sled for carrying logs over a big distance, there's really not, I mean, there are quibbles, but there's nothing major, right? There's nothing on a grand scale in terms of, like, bugs or crashes or anything like that. It's mostly just, I think, people, people want more. And I suppose, luckily for them, the main problem is it's Kelvin. So basically, one of the AI companions is just an absolute coke fiend, just going around, automating gathering and building and just causing absolute havoc in the process. So at least their bug is kind of a funny one. So let's tune in and see what happens with Kelvin going to, help out with the house. And what we basically see is, oh dear, no, please don't. And the player has been crushed by a bunch of logs. It's been fun seeing all these memes in the internet. So at least, like, this will be annoying, but, like, if this is one of your most publicly known things, and people are kind of having a laugh along with you, then that's okay. So ultimately then, for and Night, the people who are doing the forest, this is overall pretty damn awesome. Like, they are basically financially set nearly forever. I mean, I don't know exactly the size of their studio, but this is an utterly amazing thing. There is one thing. Price. And this is where Take-Two have been utterly baffling to me. So, Sons of the Forest is way cheaper. $9.99. And that is planned to be the price on launch. Kerbal? $49.99. Planned to be increased on full launch. While not on sale, technically the fully featured, Kerbal and its expansions are $39.99, $14.99, and $14.99. The early access for Kerbal Space Program was $22.99 and increased to $39.99. So for a lot of people, if this is $50, you could get away with that if you are basically launching with a fully complete experience and your early access is adding a set of new features or something like that with your audience. But frankly, that is the bit. And as this review said, price tag sets expectations. Internet historian. Yes, this is too much money. The expectations are too large. I forget exactly where that quote comes from. It may be the Ingoodening of No Man's Sky. But again, the Ingoodening of No Man's Sky is a really good example of things like that is a game that with its hype cycle and everything, being shown off by Sony in a very high profile manner, led people to think it was really a bigger game than it was. And in fairness, the developers absolutely did not help themselves in that way. I think basically everybody involved got just run away with the hype. And for Kerbal, ultimately, this is a community that's wanted this game for a long-ass time, and as you can see from all of the development shenanigans that went on, they have been made to wait a long time, but ultimately I think they're finding out that a lot of that time made, where they were forced to wait, has not been super efficient, meaningful progress on getting them a featured enough to be worth the asking price early access launch. So basically, there you go. Really, it's a tale of two different early access games. And to me, it is something that is absolutely fascinating, right? Because currently my job, and Thomas's job, is now that the Pale Beyond is out, we need to work out what we're doing next as a studio. And there are so many different business models. We could try to self-fund something that is smaller, definitely get less sales because we don't really have the access to a publisher's resources, media contacts, and all that. We could go for a publisher again. We could maybe do a Kickstarter thing, though for me that would really be the last thing that I would want to do. Or we could go for maybe some sort of early access thing where maybe we release a chunk, we make a chunk of game, release a chunk of game into early access, then maybe over 6 months or 12 months, add more chunks of game, slowly increase the price until, it is the full game price. Who knows? But certainly for anybody in game development, this is all fascinating stuff. And early access is something that's been tremendously, while it can be bullshit, it has been tremendously successful in a few instances that I would like to highlight. Number one's actually Darkest Dungeon itself, but I would also say Darkest Dungeon 2 and Hades. They're both doing an Epic Game Store funded early access. Now, the funny thing is, and we did a video a while ago about how the Epic Game Store is just a black hole to put your games in. And trust me, I don't think I can actually share any sales figures. The only figures I can share are for Steam. I can say that Epic is, let me just say all other storefronts are tiny compared to Steam. Right? They're all very small compared to Steam. But one of the things that's strong then about Epic is if you can get Tim Sweeney to, pay for your entire early access by making the early access an Epic Game Store exclusive, and then, your most hardcore audience follow you over there and help you develop the game, of course, using the Sweeney's Fortnite bucks, then you actually have what is essentially a full game launch on Steam, because let's be real, who really takes the Epic Game Store seriously? So many people aren't even going to be aware a game comes out till it hits Steam. So there are lots of very interesting business models out there. I think here we've seen a perfect example of what a modern early access sequel has got to be. I think what an early access game really should be for almost anybody as we enter a more competitive space for games. I mean, games with, Kickstarter, those have been kind of rough. I think with early access, we're just seeing a state where I think people want more and more and more and more. And I don't think that's an unreasonable thing. There are perhaps instances where it may even be cheaper to make a prototype to get a publisher fund with, because let's just say costs like 50 to 80k, maybe 100k, 150k to make a vertical slice of your game. Again, I'd be thinking about slightly a larger total production budget than something like what we've ran with. That could be vertical slice that's enough to bring to a publisher and sell. There's not going to be enough gameplay there for something that goes on to early access. So early access really does have to be something that I think is just for a genre of game that, you kind of can get started up with and make quite a lot of content quite reasonably, because otherwise it probably would be cheaper and less risky to just build a prototype to actually take to publishers. Again, though, that's just a little bit from some of my own thinking out loud. But hey, I mean, if we've put a game out there, then that's a bit of an odd experience, and I may as well share our thinking about that and what we've learned. So that's it for today's video. I think sad one for the Kerbal people, pretty damn awesome for Sons of the Forest. I hope Kerbal ends up in a brilliant state though, because look, I'm a massive space geek, I always have been, and I want a world where Kerbal Space Program 2 is awesome. And even though this launch has been pretty buggy, I think the actual developers developing the game and the hardcore fans who still love playing with the rocketry, let's just hope that they can make a game together, and maybe in 1 or 2 years, it ends up actually justifying whatever its full price ends up being. But that's it for me. If you'd like to support the show, you can check out the Steam link down below to purchase The Pale Beyond, which is our debut video game, a narrative survival role-playing game. It's on Steam. It's been super well reviewed. We've quashed a lot of those launch quibbles that did pop up, and I will have some sort of post-mortem video for you to basically talk about the launch issues, what we did to fix them, and what we learnt from them. Because again, I mean, if something does end up a wee bit scuffed, hey, that's content, right? And surely there's interesting stuff. Okay, take care, have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow.